up some of our talk with just some grounding information about what is an essay. Some of it coming from your own observations, some of it coming on the tail of talking to you guys over this past week. And I will try to make it faster than my last draft at least. So from your own words, I think you guys are right on a lot of things about what your concept of an essay is. For one, it's about a targeted topic. It's very much about one thing that you've circled, that you've determined is important, and that you are trying to convey to an audience. And in that way, I would say an essay is naturally an informational form of writing. So even something like a personal narrative, which can be an essay. It's certainly a type of essay. I'm telling you something very specific about my life so that you can understand something new, right? So in all terms, that's an informative type of writing. Essays do come in a variety of forms, so I was pleased to see you guys either were clever enough to kind of look ahead in the notes to see that there were all these different types of forms, or that you knew them off the top of your head. And some of those forms come kind of pre-written for you. A 5-paragraph essay is a form that's basically pre-written for you and not very good. A compare and contrast essay has the function of the essay kind of in the title, right? Personal narrative essay is going to tell a story. So we know some of the basic forms already, and that's good to see as we're going to start using them. Are essays formal pieces of writing? So I'm going to say yes. The reason I'm going to say essays are a formal piece of writing. They do have standards and practices, right? We use MLA. Other places will use APA or Chicago or whatever else. But that is a form, right? So we keep within the guides of that. And I think more importantly, when I talk about formal writing, I mean that the standard usage of language is consistent in essay writing. So a period works as a period, a comma works as a comma. And if you compare that to an informal piece of writing, like a poem, conventions don't have a place in a poem, right? It's not that authors don't use periods and commas. It means that if they use a period and comma, it's used for a different purpose than it is in conventional formal writing. So just kind of being aware. And then along with formal writing, I think probably every high schooler in the country could benefit from practicing formal writing more. The way that you get good at formal writing, that you don't kind of continue to make comma errors, is to practice using commas correctly in all forms of your writing. I know that's tedious. I know that you might get branded as a nerd for that, but believe me, I don't make a lot of conventions errors because I am consistently always writing that way, whether it's text or on my Snapchat or wherever. I am always using proper conventions. And you know what? Let people call me a nerd. I am a nerd. I don't care. Essays use language creatively to maintain and engage that audience interest. So essays can be a creative endeavor, and I would argue essays should be a creative endeavor. That's one of the things the course thinks. It's one of the things that I think as the instructor of the course. But definitely using language and using format, using how you're putting these things together, that's where the creativity in the essay comes in. So it's not the idea that's creative, right? That would be creative writing, where I'm making up an idea or I'm making up characters. Here it's how am I using the language to get those ideas across. So essay writing is definitely a very specific kind of writing, and creative essay is definitely a kind of writing all on its own. So old habits that you guys either talked about directly in your writing or that I'm just aware of from having taught this course for so many years. Things like hooks. Hooks are not really good writing. Hooks, the definition of a hook to me is a interesting question at the beginning of your whole paper, a rhetorical question that then you're going to blow right past. or a quote from somebody who's a much better writer than you. When I was probably in 11th and 12th grade, at some point in my life, I loved using quotes to introduce something because it sounded smart, because it was smarter than I was. And then I realized, like, oh no, if the smartest thing I have in my paper is the first sentence and the rest of the paper doesn't live up to it, then I'm probably not doing a good job of engaging my audience. So thinking about, I want to incorporate the idea of a hook as a whole section of a paper, or I don't want to do that at all. I want to engage my audience in a more authentic way. Otherwise, you'll lose them. Remember, we want to maintain that audience interest, not just pique their interest and then shove it away really quickly. Being straightforward with your intention is almost always preferred. So I think you guys are probably right on that score. When I think about introducing your topic, it is much more satisfying to an audience to know what the topic of the essay is prior to reading the essay than finding out what the real meaning was at the very end. So burying that quote unquote thesis statement or topic statement at the end of the paper, usually not a good tactic. However, there are formats where that is the intention, right? I actually want to purposely mislead my audience for a little bit, and then I want to use that mislead to get them to a really rich place. One essay, we won't study it in class because it's about 20 pages. One essay that I love from the New York Times, or the New Yorker, about 4 or 5 years ago, starts with this woman just losing everything. Like she's never lost things in her life, and she goes through this phase where she's losing her keys, and then she misplaces a car, and all these terrible things about loss. And she talks about how she's the responsible one, and it was her dad and her older sister who always lost things. And why is she going through this? And she calls her sister and she says, why am I losing things all of a sudden? And we realize that she can't call her dad because her dad recently died. And then the whole essay transitions to this loss of her dad. So by kind of building out, here are who all the people in my family are, and here's the moment I am in my life, and it's very chaotic, we get to know something rich about her before we get to the real topic, which is the loss of her father. So again, that mislead can really work, but it's got to be architected and put in there very, very graciously. Another habit that we have, trying to cover 3 things in one essay. The number is almost always 3, but I could say 4 things or 5 things or even 2 things. The point is, typically we write these 5-paragraph essays. We write a thesis statement. I say my thesis statement, I'm going to explore X, Y, and Z. And then you very generally cover X, Y, and Z, and you even have to pick out which one you covered worst and put it in second, because that's where the essay is going to be least read. You're already anticipating people not reading your work, and that's just not good writing. It's not good organization, and it gets away from that central purpose, right, which is to write about one thing, and write about one thing with depth. So if nothing else, you've probably heard me talk about depth versus breadth. Breadth being trying to cover a lot of surface area, very, very shallow, versus depth going into, real meat, real interesting stuff. And just, you can think about it in a lot of different ways. I use the term drill down. You can also think about it as building an audience up. But either way, we're thinking about going vertical instead of horizontal. I is your friend, especially if you want to create that relationship with your audience. Denying them the word I is a weird thing to do, and it often is very hard to accomplish writing a paper without using the word I and trying to engage your audience at the same time. There is a lot of formal writing that doesn't use the word I, so it's not like you've been taught that by mistake. But that writing is usually scientific. It's usually meant to create some distance between the writer and the subject, or the writer and the experiment, or the writer and the content, right? Creatively, we don't want to do that. what's the point of writing a conclusion if all you do in your conclusion is repeat yourself? So again, looking at the last tab, stop writing 5-paragraph essays. The old 5-paragraph essay is I'm going to write an introduction with one interesting thing in it. And really the whole point of the introduction is to tell what my thesis statement is. That thesis statement is, highlighted in neon and there are arrows pointing to it because it's the last sentence in the first paragraph. I've established that, so now I'm going to repeat my thesis statement, but slower over 3 different paragraphs where I go into some detail, but not very much. And now, because the whole paper was so boring, I have to repeat the exact same sentence, only using some different words, and then be like, ta-da, not very effective. It's about as boring as you can get. And so we want that conclusion to do something different than just repeat. In fact, oftentimes we repeat because we literally have no idea what else to do with it. So the upshot, stop writing those 5-paragraph essays. They are forbidden in this class. So starting with some new habits, start thinking about your audience and your purpose. If you start the whole process from there, what do I want to write about? Who am I writing it to? Why am I writing it? Then you're going to start to develop the whole essay in a different way. You're going to develop that idea in a different way because you're going to be thinking about who am I talking to? What do I want them to get out of this experience? And spoiler alert, the answer is almost never, I want to talk to a 38-year-old man. That is a weird audience for a high school student to be writing to, despite the fact that it is a common audience for all of you to be writing to. So don't write to me. Give me the respect and admiration to know that I've been teaching this long enough that I can read something that's not aimed at me and still understand it, if not take some enjoyment out of it. And again, highlighting that purpose and drilling down into it instead of across that surface. So once you find that idea, what do I really want to say about it? How do I go down into it? How do I get into the depth? Pick a structure then that aligns with your audience and your purpose. So if you are planning an essay and you say, okay, well, I want to write about how great my iPhone is, and I want my audience to be teenagers who have Android, so I'm going to write a compare and contrast essay about how the iPhone is better than the Android. When you start to develop, like, what do I really have to say about that? You're probably not having a lot to drill down into. It's a compare and contrast essay. I have to do both of those things, and the comparisons are way outweigh the contrasts. You're probably coming up with the answer of like, this isn't really a good essay topic. It's probably not worth all the time and energy, and I'm probably not going to get much out of it. Neither is my audience. So that's kind of how I start to develop ideas. Is it worth developing after I start putting it down? Thinking about your relationship to your audience. So thinking about, are they my peers? Am I in a place of knowledge or expertise? Am I underneath a place of knowledge or expertise, right? All of those things kind of define how you're going to talk to your audience, right? And then conclude with something new. So you've put us through this experience, right? We've gone through this journey with you. Now that we know these things, what can we talk about or what can we experience? So I think about, after we've read a book, now we get to talk about the nitty gritty and why did this author make this decision and why did this author make this decision, right? We can't really have that conversation prior to reading the book, or we can't have it authentically, right? So if you're the writer of this essay, what can we talk about or what can we experience differently now that we've seen this through your eyes or seen this through your experience? We should be getting to a new place or a new idea instead of repeating something old. And that's the real, it's really hard. It's not like a quick trick, but that's the real hard thing about conclusions is we have to get somewhere new instead of just repeating what we just said. So hopefully this helps you kind of think about essays and kind of give you some rules. Again, thoughts that I have that I want to make sure that I record so that we get them to you in some way, shape, or form. And I apologize that it's probably still too long, but that's okay.